Cool. Very ethereal. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
So we got Brett Ziegler here. We're talking about some kind of brainy, complicated chords. We're talking about minor 11th chords. They're like pretty versatile, but they come in so many different shapes and sizes. So why don't we just like dive right into this and start talking about, first of all, why are we talking about minor 11th chords and not major 11th chords?
Right. Well, so we've done other videos and other lessons on other chord extensions, being ninths and 13ths.
Yeah.
And I think of them as kind of more straightforward. Like a 13th chord is a great 5 chord to use. You can kind of work that into to songs more easily, and the different types of ninth chords are all over the place. 11ths, it's kind of a complicated thing, but if I'm just going with building a chord, the problem with the 11th is that it really clashes and takes away from the third.
Yeah.
So that's a comfortable chord, even with the 13th in there. But that dissonance takes away from kind of the majorness of the major chord.
Yeah.
Because of that semitone crunch. And not just that it's a semitone, but that it's a semitone from the third, that kind of minor ninth from the third.
Yeah.
So we call that an avoid note in jazz theory.
Yeah.
So normally for a major chord or a dominant chord that is an 11th, the kind of workaround that's come into jazz theory is to raise that 11th and come up with this sharp 11th chord.
Sounds pretty cool.
And that full chord with the 13th and everything is also referred to as the full Lydian chord, because it has a whole scale, in it.
Right.
All those notes with the raised fourth are in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are all in it.
Yeah.
So that alone is kind of a cool thing, to end a song in, say, C and just play a D major triad.
Nice.
That colors it with the 13th and the raised 11th.
Yeah.
And it's such an essential kind of jazz chord and jazz sound. There's even a jazz bar in Montreal that is, the title is French, but it's French for sharp 11th.
Right.
It's like such a defining thing that this is a jazz bar. We do jazz music here.
Yeah.
But because that is a non-scale note, it really takes it into a whole different direction from whatever else the song is doing.
Right.
In the minor version of this, you don't have that clash in the 11th. Because those are a whole tone apart instead of a semitone apart.
Yeah.
It still feels like A minor 7, 9. The 11th kind of fits in there and doesn't disturb the nature of the chord.
Right.
So because of that, I would say not only do we not have to alter it, but it also just kind of fits into our pop songs.
Right.
You can kind of sneak that anywhere where a minor chord is, like your 2 minor, your 6 minor, your 3 minor.
Yeah.
Mostly 2 and 6, and it's adding a different color. But it's not totally taking it outside of what everyone else would be playing or what is
it's still in the same color of the scale that the song is written in. Okay, well, let's just go right back to the very basics and let's make a minor 11th chord just in root position, just for anyone that's like still looking at this as a crazy bunch of numbers here.
Right.
How do you spell out a minor 11th chord in like C minor, for instance?
Sure. Well, can I do it in D minor? Because then it's all white notes.
Sure.
It's kind of
Okay, we'll do it.
Probably easier to see visually.
Yeah. Okay.
So the first 3 notes, D, F, A, is your minor triad.
Yeah.
So that's just a D minor chord.
Yeah.
The minor 7th, on top of that, is the 7th note of that natural minor scale.
Yeah.
The 9 is just a third above that in the same natural minor scale. So this is the same as the 2nd note, but up an octave.
Yeah.
And anything beyond a 7th has to have the 7th in it as well to make it a 9 or an 11 or a 13
Right.
chord. That 7th is really important to stay in there.
Yeah.
The 5th is not as essential, and an 11th chord doesn't have to have a 9 in it, and a 13th chord doesn't have to have a 9 and 11th in it.
Right.
So sometimes those voicings get dropped, but
Yeah.
the root obviously has to be there. The 3rd that makes it minor or makes it major is
Yeah.
really essential, and
Yeah.
the 7th
And the
has to
7th.
be there.
Okay, so you have those are like your 3 essential tones, and
Yeah.
then your other extensions are basically, they're still within the scale, but they're an octave up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 9 is the 2nd degree of the scale, an octave up. The 11th that we're talking about today is the 4th degree of the scale, an
Yeah.
octave up.
Yeah.
And then the 13th, if we were going to that, would be the 6th degree of that scale,
Okay.
an octave up.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's the basics. Now, the first line of the sheet music that we have provided here has 3 kind of famous forms of the minor 11th. And the thing that's so remarkable about them is they sound so different, right?
Yeah, I definitely think so too. There's because there's so much different character going on in that chord, where you put the different voicings really changes how you're hearing it and the kind of impact that it has.
Yeah. Do you want to contrast these 3 like iconic
Sure.
11th chords here?
So the very first one is kind of known from being in a Miles Davis song that Bill Evans plays piano for, called "So What."
Yeah.
A cool thing about this chord is if I build it on E instead of on D, E, A, D, G, B. If I put another root on the top, anyone who's picked up a guitar will recognize that is what the open strings of a standard tuned guitar are.
Yeah.
So when you just strum a guitar that's in standard tuning without putting your fingers down anywhere, you'll get this an octave lower. You'll get an E minor 11th chord.
Right.
And then if you bar any fret, like all the strings anywhere up, you get exactly this chord shape in whatever key you happen to be.
Cool.
So that's one of the reasons, like in terms of theory, that this voicing kind of works so well, is it's kind of intuitive for guitar players.
Yeah.
And I think part of what makes it sound unique to the other ones is that 11th is so low in the chord. So you don't hear it as a color note way up high extending. It's the very second note from what you're building. So you've got the root, the 11, the 7, the 3, and we can technically stop there. So just building 4 perfect fourths gives you, the meat and potatoes of a minor 11th chord.
Yeah.
And then we've got the 5th note on the top in this particular voicing.
Right. Right. So.
Oh, I should play just a little sample of that song.
Okay, yeah. Let's play. Like you play some "So What," you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So the normal, it's usually the bass that plays, and then the piano answers.
Yeah.
And then it happens in another key. And then back down. And that's basically the song form right there. All relying on that shape, that voicing of the minor 11th chord.
Yeah. So that's a good one to kind of like try out and listen for when you're trying out those chords.
So once again, that very second note there is the 11th. So that's the color note we're talking about. It's the 4th.
Yeah.
In this case, happening down in that position. And the 7th, the minor 3rd, and the 5th make that voicing.
Cool.
And it's just one note away, that E away from being an open guitar tuning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. So what about this Kenny Barron one?
Yeah. So this is kind of like the other end of the spectrum. Instead of something closed in, all built in fourths, the Kenny Barron voicing is built all in fifths. So in the left hand, I put a perfect fifth on a perfect fifth. So that gets me my 9 and my 5.
Yeah.
And then in the right hand, you build other perfect fifths only a semitone away. So just next to that 9, I get the minor 3rd and the 7th. And then this 11th is way out on top.
Yeah.
So this is probably not a voicing I would reach for in the middle of just playing other things.
Yeah.
Because it definitely sounds like you're going into a very different voicing.
Yeah.
And so in terms of voice leading, unless you're playing all your chords spread out like this, it kind of comes out of the blue.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty, especially in some keys, this is a pretty big stretch.
Yeah.
So if you have trouble hitting 1, 5, 9 in both hands, it sounds beautiful, arpeggiated as well. You can break that chord up in any way you want to.
Yeah.
And it gives you the same notes. Another cool thing about just noodling around in this kind of style, like I was doing in the opening, if I move my right hand up just a semitone, it does 3 things for me. It raises the 3rd from minor to major, it raises the 7th from minor to major, and it raises the 11th up to a sharp 11.
Right.
So you get a major sharp 11 chord.
Right.
So major 7 sharp 11 chord.
Cool.
So you can make a basic kind of pop progression with a couple major and a couple minor chords. I'd probably avoid the 5 chord, but some 1s and 4s and 6s and 2s.
Yeah.
And just play it that way. So whatever note you start on, 1, 5, 9, and then next door neighbor. That gives you the minor 11 chord. And just up a semitone with your right hand, so a whole tone away from your top note in your left hand. Gives you the major 7 sharp 11 chord.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it's cool. So that's just lots of fun to just experiment and try different things.
Well, it's awesome how kind of complex and spacious and kind of emotive it sounds, but it's you can make such cool sounding sophisticated chords with just a little movement like that. A little semitonal movement is kind of sweet.
Yeah, I should also mention the So What chord doesn't have a 9 in it. So it has the 11, the 7, and the 3, which are really important.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the 9 as well, which you could put in. Default, the Kenny Barron minor chord, as it's called, has all those voicings in it as well.
Yeah. Cool. So what about this Herbie Hancock one that we got on bar 3?
This is the one that I've built some options for exercises around.
Cool.
There's a couple things I really like about it. One is the idea that if I'm in D and I play a C triad, I'm kind of part way to having an 11 chord already. If I do just that, there's nothing minor or major about that alone. It's not really saying what kind of D this is. But that gives me kind of an 11th sound, because it gives you your 7, 9, and 11 just to play a major triad a whole tone down from the key you're in. So in the first exercise I actually use that chord as well. It's a kind of a gospel-y chord to have as your 5 chord, a 4/5. So 2, 5. So I've actually seen some sheet music where they call that an 11th chord, but I don't think that's really legit, because it's not, it's avoiding that third for good reason.
Yeah.
And it's kind of its own sound. But that's a cool sound to get to know as an option for a 5 chord.
Yeah.
So the Herbie Hancock chord has that that C major triad on the top in the case of D. So that major triad plus catches the minor third just below that.
Yeah.
So it's built off 1, 5, and then 3.
Yeah.
And then this triad above.
And triad on top.
Yeah, and when these 2 notes are both white notes, I tend to hit them both with my thumb. And I've seen people, far more legitimate players than me, do that all the time. So that's a good, helpful cheat as well to catch that.
Cool, cool. So is that the way you think of minor 11th chords? You kind of like, you're forming 2 less complicated chords and then you're just sort of stacking them together?
Yeah, especially if I'm trying to, on the fly, try to read sheet music and I don't know the song, or not sheet music, but a fake
like
book
where
I'm seeing charts, chords coming by.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll think of just getting, that kind of major triad a whole step down from the key I'm in.
Yeah. Cool, really cool. Okay, well let's move on to the second little exercise, that B spot here. What's going on here?
Well, A and B. There's
yeah, okay.
They're just integrating the Herbie Hancock minor 11th voicing into different 2-5-1 exercises.
Yeah, okay.
So this first one, the A example,
Yeah.
I have 2, 5. I'm doing that F over G thing that's kind of related to 11th chords, but it's not really, because it doesn't have any third to make this explicitly major or minor.
Right.
So that's the 4/5 sound.
Yeah.
And then I just brought it home to a major 9th, just in standard closed position.
Yeah.
And one more time. And then the next example, B, is just trading it for a different 5 variation. This is an augmented one with a raised 5th. And the cool thing about this, in terms of like physically playing it, is the top 2 notes walk down chromatically, and the other 2 notes stay the same. And then it comes home to the same major 9 chord.
Yeah.
So one more time. There's that Herbie Hancock minor 11th chord. The top 2 notes go down a half step each. And then home to your 1 major 9 chord.
Yeah. So do you, like, it seems like most of the cases that you're at least showing these exercises here, you're using your minor 11th in as the 2.
As the 2.
As the 2.
Yeah.
So is that, like, would you say, or can you say that's the most common chord that it would be based off of, or?
I would say 6s are just as common.
Okay, 6s and 2s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because we've been working with different 2-5-1 exercises right from the very beginning, this is a cool way to add different variation and color to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So what about this third line here. Now we're still using the Herbie Hancock voicing, it looks like.
Yeah. So this is just cycling through, like we've done the kind of, what did we call it, going around the tour? Did we call it the 251 tour?
Sure, yeah.
Way back in the first
with the foundation videos.
Yeah. So this is kind of like that, but dropping the one chord. So it's just 2, 5, the next 2, 5, the next 2, 5. And it could come home and stop anywhere with a major chord in place of the next one. But instead it goes straight 2, 5 to 2, 5 to 2, 5, cycling down a half step every time.
So this is just to get this chord under your fingers, kind of.
Yeah, and just to see how it moves. And, you know, it's a good sight reading exercise to look at it on paper, but it's also good to ignore the sheet music altogether and go, could I figure this out if left to my own devices? Just watching
with
how my
a chart
hands
or whatever?
move.
Or with just the pattern of the keyboard.
Yeah,
that is a great challenge.
Yeah, any of those kind of combinations.
Yeah.
So just playing through that C exercise there. Starts with the Herbie Hancock voicing, does the 4/5 thing, and then goes straight to the next Herbie Hancock voicing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Why don't you play that again, maybe just a little bit slower so people can follow along.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I also want to say, if I'm starting here, let's say I start it. I could stop anywhere else on any other chord.
Yeah.
But this is just a cycle that takes me all the way through, all the way home, back to C, an octave all the way down.
Yeah. Beautiful. That actually just sounds pretty musical in its own right there.
Yeah, and a lot of like jazz standards especially, or kind of like pop music from earlier in the 20th century, will have lots of cycles like that are built around the progression.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard for like modern pop players to even, like if you've tried to play old Christmas songs even and stuff, it's like, oh, they'll move in other directions.
Doing all sorts of weird modulations and stuff.
They don't live in the same mode, the same scale for the whole song.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing when we do this exercise, is really going into a new key every bar.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, if anyone wants like a simpler version of this to like start off those lessons that we did, the unit, the unit 9. Brett was in here to teach a 2-5-1 tour, going through all the different keys. So that would be a great starting off point, and then you can start applying these minor 11ths and crazy chord extensions as well.
Yeah, and that's with just minor 7th chords.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So we have a whole other page of these crazy chords here.
Yeah.
We have a little bit, like, let's dive in a little bit to what we've got here.
Sure. Yeah. And you know, if this is all feeling really intimidating, you feel free to not go ahead with it right away. There are just other options to hear different colors of chords. And another big advantage that comes through trying this kind of stuff is playing along and hearing, oh, that's not the right chord. Like getting to know the sound of this chord.
Absolutely.
To go, oh, I've done something wrong here, because I know what that minor 11th, especially that voicing of the minor 11th, I know what that's supposed to sound like. So if I get one of the notes off, I'll know that, oh, something's not quite right. So that ear training by repetition is
Well,
really
even you
well.
talking at the beginning of the lesson here, contrasting between the major and minor 11ths. Like the major 11th does sound super abrasive, right? Because of that semitonal dissonance.
Yeah.
So that's whenever I'm practicing this kind of stuff, I'm like, if I bump into something like that, it's like, wait a minute, find where that rub is and kind of iron it out. But, yeah. So what do we got on page 2?
Yeah. So all I've done is switch out what the 5 chord is, what the second chord of each bar is.
Yeah.
And I've switched it to an augmented chord. So this is a dominant 7th with a sharp 5. Right. And one of the reasons I like that for this exercise is you'll notice if you look at just the top 2 notes in this progression, they just go down chromatically all the way.
Right.
The spelling gets a little weird in places. At some point, I kind of decided to switch from flats to sharps because you've kind of got to do that at some point.
Yeah.
That 4th bar there, if I had made that an A flat minor 11th, which is really what it is, that's what the 2-5-1 is going to.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, you end up with like C or B sharps instead of C's.
Yeah.
But to spell the chord, properly, you always end up with some strange-looking notes. In this case, there's that G double sharp.
Is that what that is there? That little X?
Yeah, that X means it's sharped twice.
Yeah.
So really, what it is an A. Physically, that's what you're playing. But you can ignore all of that if you just are walking down the top 2 notes.
Yeah.
That'll get you there.
Yeah.
And the bottom 2 notes of your left hand stay put. Right? So the top 2 notes just come down a half step, and then the bottom 2 notes go down a whole step to the next cycle. Did that wrong. That's just kind of a cool sound and a cool progression because of how those top notes just walk down by half steps.
Yeah. Nice. So what about E?
Yeah, the E one is just to integrate that 13th, which is another chord extension we talked about.
Yeah.
So in that case, the top note stays the same and walks down a whole tone scale.
Right.
Oops.
Cool. So it sounds like, at least in my perspective here, each one of these exercises that we've been looking at sort of has a specific sound to look out for. Like we have the chromatic moving down for the D exercise, then we have the whole tone moving down for just this previous one. Like whenever you're working with these chord movements that are modulating from across keys and kind of working their way down the keyboard, is that a good way to approach it? Just listen out for like a specific tone moving, like the way consistently moving down the keyboard?
I think so. I mean, voice leading always kind of matters, right?
Yeah.
And the top note that you're playing is always going to be heard the most. That's kind of your melody note, generally. The top note that you're playing is, people are going to zero in and hear that as the melody and the way things are moving.
Yeah.
So if you pick something that's moving down as your top note, that's what people will hear. Or this last exercise that moves down in whole steps, you really notice that and hear that. And even back to the beginning of this lesson, the different voicings, what's on top always matters. So that Kenny Barron voicing puts that 11th right out on the top, whereas the So What voicing kind of tucks it in really low in the chord.
Yeah.
And it definitely just gives a whole different yeah, a whole different coloring to the chord, even though it's the same chord, or basically the same chord.
Yeah, crazy. That's these chords are just so deep. Like the application of them and the way they can appear in music still blows my mind. You know.
And truly, if you're saying, well, how am I going to integrate these into my Americana roots songs or my country songs?
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
like these are like taller chords that go into different directions.
Yeah.
So if you're not interested in what these sounds can do or bring to music that you kind of write around this or that already lives in this kind of genre, you don't need to explore this stuff.
Right.
But it certainly opens up a whole world of possibilities, and just playing with those open fifth Kenny Barron chords and writing your own kind of music around that as an exercise.
Yeah.
I've found really satisfying as a way to improvise.
Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else that you want to cover with this?
No, I think that's a lot to chew on.
It's a lot. This is a hefty one. So we actually don't have any questions on it, but I'm sure they'll come up for anyone watching the archive. So if anyone does have questions on this, let us know either with my personal email or submit to the forums or Facebook, or you know how to get a hold of us. My last question for you, Brett, is there any like artists or specific jazz songs that are good to listen to just to hear this kind of stuff?
Well, listening to So What is a, if you ever play with kind of a jazz standards band, that song is going to come up. Yeah. And it's just a good album to know as well. Yeah.
Cool. So I'll link some songs that use these kind of minor 11th sounds in the archived lesson. But thanks so much for diving down this crazy rabbit hole, Brett.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week. Bye.